Hey there. Welcome to episode 101. My name's Megan. I'm a life coach and I help women handle stress and anxiety. And I'm about to introduce you to Ellyn Schinke. Ellyn is a burnout coach. She helps millennial solopreneurs work less, live more. And oh my gosh, you guys, I know I say this all the time, but this interview was so much fun. We talked forever before we ever even started. We laughed. I have no idea how we stayed on track or even if we stayed on track that much. You're going to love this interview. You're going to learn about burnout. You're going to laugh. You're going to have so much fun. Be sure that you follow her. She is on Instagram. She's on Threads. She's Coach Ellyn, CoachEllyn. Enjoy this episode. Share somebody you know who is burned out, who needs a little help with their mental health. And be sure that you go to Ellyn's podcast as well. Leave her a review. Leave a review here. I'm super excited to bring this. I'm just going to shut up and let her roll. Enjoy the episode. Tell us everything we need to know about you.
Oh, okay. Are we
Yeah.
are we already recording? I
Yeah,
didn't even
let's just
realize we were
go.
already
Let's just
recording.
go for it.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So, hi everybody. I'm Ellyn. And as we've just discussed, I'm from the Seattle area. But I always like to start my kind of like, who the heck am I? How did I end up here? By talking like throwing it back to like teenage Ellyn. I still work with teenagers in another part of the work that I do. And this is why, because I feel like so many of us are like formative, how we work, how we relate to work. I feel like that starts when we're teenagers. So I always like to throw it back to when teenage Ellyn, and teenage Ellyn was like a stereotypical like high achiever, overachiever, probably. Very externally validated. I was
Mhm.
that kid that I just wanted everything I did. I just wanted people to tell me that like you're doing a good job. That was what motivated me. And that's a blessing because it made me a very, very hard worker and it made me, very competent and very responsible. But it's a curse because I feel like I realized in my mid to late 20s that a lot of what I was pursuing and achieving, I was doing it for the wrong reasons. But
Mhm.
that's maybe I'm fast forwarding a little bit too quickly. So
No, I
teenage
think this
Ellyn
is
was like
good.
that. Yeah, teenage Ellyn was like that. Ellyn was like that in college. And then fast forward to grad school, and that's really where things came to a head. I feel like all of us reach a point where the ways in which we operated when we were young no longer work anymore. And whether that is, we just don't have the energy to have that many things on our plate or whatever it is. And for me, that was grad school. And it really came to a head in grad school because it was mental exhaustion, it was physical exhaustion because I was just doing so much stuff. But really, the kicker was it was emotional exhaustion.
Mhm.
I hit this wall in grad school where I realized that the validation I was seeking from other people just was like no longer enough. And I really had to start figuring out what do I want? What does Ellyn value? What does Ellyn care about? I have referred to myself in third person so much since we've started this conversation. But
No, I
um
like this. This is like the conversation I have with myself when it's just me hanging out
yeah.
at my house. So this is good.
Yeah, it's like I had to know, like, I had to really boil it down to what I wanted.
Mhm.
And when I realized what I wanted and I kind of started looking around at the path I was pursuing, I was a scientist. I was getting my PhD. I was going to be Dr. Ellyn. I had multiple publications. And as validating and as good at that path as I was, I didn't want it. Like, I would look up the ladder at the grad schools that were ahead of me or the grad students that were ahead of me and like my mentor, and I would look up the ladder and I would just realize they're happy and they're fulfilled, but I don't want their life. And
Ooh,
it's not that there was anything wrong with their life.
yeah.
I just didn't want it. That's not what I saw for myself. And that was like a gut punch because that is the only career path I had ever seen for myself. And so
Yeah.
as I tried to kind of work my way out of this, as I realized that I was burned out and that I needed something to get me out of this, I started doing and this is where the being a scientist actually benefited me a lot. I
Mhm.
started just like researching the absolute hell out of burnout and stress and self-care and personal growth, and I became a sponge for anything self-care or personal growth related. And in
Mhm.
doing so, I found coaching. And that threw a massive monkey wrench into my life because I have never loved anything as much as I have loved coaching. But it was like, I wish I could say it was like an easy transition from there. And I dropped out of grad school and I became a coach. It was all butterflies and unicorns. It was not. There was a very challenging identity shifts that happened in the process of leaving behind science and stepping into coaching because this was like 10 years ago, it's like 7 years ago now, and let's be honest, coaching is just now starting to become respected as a field. I feel like
Yes.
back then, I do not feel like it was. And so every ounce of myself and frankly, a lot of the people around me were like, "What the hell are you doing?"
Yeah.
So
And I
it
think there was
was
a lot of
rough.
people like coaching, they're like, it's not even a thing.
Yeah.
It's like a
I didn't
sport.
think it
Like,
was a
what
thing.
sport? That was the thing. They were like, oh, what sport are you going to coach? I'm like, A, swim, but
Exactly.
B, not a sport. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And I actually had somebody ask me the other day that like if I had been more self-aware back when I was a teenager, do I think I would have ended up in the coaching path sooner? And my answer was like, honestly, no, because
Hmm.
coaching wasn't on my radar. Coaching wasn't even something that I thought you could do. And so, like, naturally stepping into this, there was a part of me that was like fighting against my own internal biases of like coaching isn't a real field, like coaching isn't a real career path, and the biases of people around me. Like, it was really hard to go from something that was so innately respected
Hmm.
to something that frankly wasn't. So that was a big mindset shift and identity shift. And I wish I could say I didn't burn out again after that either, but nobody teaches you, they don't teach business and biology programs is always what I joke about. So like nobody teaches you how to run a business. And frankly, passion does not prevent burnout, contrary to what
Mm-mm.
anybody might say, including Gary Vee. Like passion does not prevent burnout. It doesn't matter how much you love it. I
Yeah.
loved what I was doing, but that was actually the Achilles heel is I loved
Yeah.
what I was doing. And I sometimes have to talk myself through stopping. And so I started my business and I burned out again because I had no
Right.
idea how to do this and have a healthy balanced lifestyle at the same time. So
Mhm.
that's kind of how I got to doing this work. And now it's all I do. Like I like live and breathe burnout and stress management. Even when I am doing my other work with my students, I am constantly thinking about burnout and stress. I literally had a 45-minute conversation with a student last night about test anxiety and how to calm
Yeah.
herself down. So, like, this is what I do. I coach it, I teach it, I speak on it. Like, this is burnout has become my life as a result of this. And I literally said last week in a newsletter I sent out to my coaching, list that burnout is the best thing that ever happened to me in a lot of ways because
Yeah.
I would not be here now without it.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? First of all, that please don't get burnout on burnout, which just feels all very
Yeah.
meta, right? But I think you're right. Like this idea that like, if you're passionate about something, then you won't get burnout. I'm like, no, if you're passionate about something, if you're not careful, you'll burn yourself so fast that you won't be passionate about it anymore.
Absolutely. There's literally so many surveys and studies about the people who claim to be passionate about the work are oftentimes more likely to experience burnout. And there was a
Mhm.
really interesting article I saw over the weekend that Ariana Huffington had shared on LinkedIn. And I actually commented on it because it was really interesting. She contradicted herself in her post. Like
Oh,
the research that she was saying said passion does not prevent burnout, but the commentary that Ariana Grande, I almost said Ariana
I
Grande,
want to know what she
Ariana
thinks too.
Huffington, like Ariana Huffington had said was like contradictory to that. So it was really, really interesting. I feel like we've been told for so long, just find your passion, you're gonna be fine. Find something that you love doing. But there's a dark side to that because when you love something, you have a hard time stopping doing it.
Mm,
And that's something I constantly have to remind myself of and that I constantly speak to because I think it's a massive misconception when it comes to
mhm.
career and profession. I feel like my mission now has become I want to change the way we think and make decisions about our careers.
And I
Like
think
I
you're right.
want us to realize that burnout is a choice and you can choose differently.
Especially with what you said about the like in the like get external validation growing up.
Mhm.
If that this is my passion and they're telling me I'm doing good, I'm doing a great job. My students are getting results, everything is going so well.
Mhm.
That's still external validation. I mean,
Yep.
you can, yeah, I mean, and if that's what you're like, oh, but I love this so much, more. But
Yeah.
you have to keep doing more to keep getting more. And that's a hard line to draw, especially you're right. I went to school for education. They don't teach you
Mm.
about business and education. They
Oh,
basically
heck
give
no.
you free business. There's like, here's 30 kids at a time, run
Yeah.
with it. So it is, I mean, figuring that all out. And I mean, coming from biology or an education field where you're like, no, I want to have the successful build or the successful business, but I'm not sure where to stop. Like, what if I have an idea in the middle of the night? Or what if
Ugh.
do I need to do this past my hours because it's just me?
Yep.
How do
Yep.
you put those
Well,
boundaries down for yourself?
oh my God. It's hard. And I will even say, and this is the one place where I like almost defend those of us who are single. Like, yes, people who are single and childless don't have children to take care of or like somebody else to like, take care of with their spouse or whatever. But simultaneously, I don't have anything around me making me
Mm,
turn off. So,
hmm.
like, it's almost like the overwork can be worse when you're single. And so that's an even added thing to it. And I've realized for myself, it's hard. I actually even had a conversation recently with one of my clients that since I don't plan on having kids, I feel like that I don't want that to give me a free pass to just work, but I also feel like the what I would pour into children, I'm pouring into the impact I want to leave and the
Mhm.
legacy I want to leave and what I'm creating professionally. So I do feel like there's a balance there, but for me, what I have to do is I have to put it on the calendar. I literally realized earlier, like maybe a couple weeks ago, that it is now the nice time of year in the Seattle area. I want to take advantage of it. But if I don't literally put on the calendar, oh, I'm meeting up with so and so this day, or I'm going to go hike this mountain on this day, if I don't put that into my calendar, it is so easy for me to sit down at my computer, especially because I live in a 500 square foot studio. So, like, my little office setup is like
Yeah.
always in my face. I will sit down at my computer and I will work the entire day. And here's the other side of it too. I don't think burnout is just about overwork. So I don't feel like
Mm-mm.
there's problems with being in a season where you are grinding and you are hustling. But the problem is when you are working, 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 and you're doing nothing to pour back into yourself. And pouring back into yourself can look like so many different things. It can look like exercise. It can look like I'm going to go on, a walk out in the sun or a walk out at the park or whatever. It can look like going on a hike. It can look like reading or journaling
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
I taught myself how to watercolor during COVID. That was like my COVID hobby that I
Heck
created for
yeah.
myself. So like I have to put that on the calendar. I also am a big proponent of delegating to systems. I'm the kind of person I've been a manager in my past life. I have
Mhm.
no desire for my business to become something where I have to manage 80 bajillion people for my business to operate. So, like, I delegate to technology a lot. And I realized that if I have to constantly enforce my boundaries around when I want to work, how many meetings I want to have on any given day, I'm going to fail miserably at that. So I delegate to technology. Like most schedulers that you use Calendly. I use
Mhm.
Acuity because it's built into my website platform. Like I have to rely on my schedulers to say, okay, this is when Ellyn is available. And this is how many meetings Ellyn is willing to have scheduled into her calendar. My scheduler handles all of that. And the times where I don't leverage my scheduler are the times when I break my boundaries. So
Yeah.
I feel like I have to delegate to technology a lot. And I just have to, my calendar, even though like I don't operate by my calendar in terms of my to-dos and how I spend my time, my calendar is there to literally define this is when I'm socializing and this is when I'm going to go do something for fun. This is when I'm going to get out of my house. So those are probably the biggest ways that I enforce my own boundaries is with technology and just like putting things on my calendar.
I love that. And it's funny because I have this love affair with my paper calendar, but I also have my digital calendar and you're right. Like the parts where I end up just sabotaging myself over and over again is
Mhm.
where I use Calendly or I have things on my computer, but I forget to put them in the paper calendar. And then why won't I give up the paper calendar? I don't know. I don't know.
Mhm.
But I like it. So, but it's one of those things where it does get in your way. And for the last
Mhm.
2 weeks, I'm like, what happened 2 weeks ago that made this happen? Like I
Mhm.
had so much going on at once. And it really comes down to not using technology the way it needed to use it.
Mhm.
And so, but what you said about we really can get on like in a place where we are working and like really grinding through and
Mhm.
putting things out. And sometimes it does require that.
Mhm.
So this idea that like, no, for my self-care, I have to have this me time where I just don't do
Mhm.
anything. I don't know if that's a personality thing or if I don't know where that falls. Do you feel like there are, I think there's a level of I don't want to say acceptance. That's not the word I'm looking for. A level of where like I can tolerate the tolerance level maybe where I need more time. Everybody obviously needs more time depending on
Mhm.
whether they're an introvert or an extrovert or what else they've got going on in their lives. But this idea that like I can't work too hard or else. Like I feel like we're at this weird place in history right now where it's almost like people are afraid to
To work
work at
less.
all, or I feel like they're almost afraid to work at all. Like, I don't ever wanna get to the grind area where I'm like, there's so much power in that grind sometimes, and you're so
Mhm.
energized, but you're right, it is balanced with, but I also know I need to go for a hike, or I'm going to get up and work out in the morning. Like there's balance in there, but it's almost like
So
I'm
are
either
you
going
saying
to
is there like
work.
a tolerance to like the level of work?
Yes, like maybe the tolerance to a level of work. Like I'm afraid if I start working too much that I won't be able to schedule these other things in. Or if I start scheduling things in, I won't be able to balance. It's almost like a problem balancing it.
And see, I think maybe that's where the misconception of balance comes from. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
used to think that like my day had to be balanced or my
Mm-hmm.
week had to be balanced. And I no longer think of balance that way anymore. I think of balance more as kind of a long game. Like, is my month balanced? Is my quarter balanced? Because frankly, you could even have a month that is put your head down and grind for the next month.
Mm-hmm.
But if over the course of the quarter that is balanced by a month where you're not grinding and you're really focusing on socializing, like this month, I actually feel like in a lot of ways, like this is a terrible example, but also a fantastic example. Because this month, my birthday was last week. I turned 35, like literally a week ago. Yay, yay, turning
Woo,
35.
happy birthday.
Um, Thank you. Thank you. So but like this month has been really interesting because I have been giving my parents so much shit because they are out of the country right now. They missed my
Mhm.
35th birthday. They're not here. Like, so I've been giving them so much shit, but I finally told my mom, I was like, don't worry about it because I have the most fun May planned. Like I have all the things happening in May. I had a birthday celebration with my friends like a week before my birthday. I took myself on a staycation. I went to Victoria, British Columbia, and it was amazing. I'm going to a conference later. Oh, and I had a speaking engagement at the very beginning of May, like May 1st. I had a speaking engagement and then play. And then this week I'm going to a conference for 2 days in Phoenix, which yay, sunshine, and it's going to be jam packed. But I'm
Mhm.
also really excited to meet some people that I've never met in real life before. I've only met them digitally.
So fun.
So there's that. And then next week I have another speaking engagement. And then the week after that, I'm going to Boise for like 5 or 6 days because my grandma's turning 90 and we're all getting together for her 90th to have like this big celebration. So this is maybe a terrible example for an introvert in the sense that I have a lot of crap going on. And I do consider myself to be an introvert. But I also feel like it's a wonderful balance in the sense that I've got play
Mhm.
here and I've got hustle. And then I've got play and then I've got hustle. And I'm literally like alternating it.
Yeah.
If you looked at any given day in my calendar this month, you would probably be like, she has crappy balance. But if you look at literally the last month and a half in terms of how I've spent my time, I'm really proud of how balanced I am right now.
Yeah.
Like it is not work, 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 work. It is literally work. And now I'm going to go take 5 days off and go like explore Victoria. And then
Mhm.
I worked on Saturday this week because I knew I had another, play coming up, another trip coming up.
Mhm.
So like I am really proud of the balance I have, but I think it's because I've redefined balance. I don't no longer think of it as a balanced day or balanced week because for most of us, you're not going to have a balanced day or balanced week, but your month or your quarter needs to be balanced. And I think if we look at it more that way, that's an easier balance to maintain. That's a much more practical balance to maintain. Does that answer your question?
That is perfect. Yeah, that's actually perfect because I think that I like the fact that you touched on what an introvert would do because a lot of times, you'll hear like, well, I can't because I'm such an introvert. And I'm like, let's not confuse introvert with social anxiety, first of all.
Oh,
And
yes.
yes, like those are two very separate things. And you can be very talkative and able to go out and do things and still have to be alone to recharge. And I think that
Oh, yeah.
that definition is really, really important. So for anyone who listens that says, well, I don't know how we would do that because I'm such an introvert that whenever I go around people, I just feel so exhausted. I'm like, I'm not sure that
I
that's
do too.
introversion.
I do
Yeah.
too. When I'm around a lot of people, I feel exhausted, but here's how I'm playing it out literally this week.
Yeah.
Is I'm going to this conference. Could have worked really hard to get an Airbnb with the other people in my community that are also going to this conference. I could have done that. Absolutely. But I know myself and I know the
Hmm.
past situations where I have been at an event with people and sharing a residence with people, and that is too much. I would rather pay the money to get my own hotel room so that I have a place to recharge at the end of
Yes.
the day. Like I am going to be like socializing and like chatting it up like nobody's business over the next 3 days. But I have a place to go back to where I can be by myself. And
Yeah.
I know if I need to tell, and a lot of the people in my network know this about me too. I consider myself an outgoing introvert. I love people, but it's like a switch flips in my brain when I'm out with people where I will suddenly be like having a ball, like chat it up, laughing, like life of the party, up on
Yeah.
stage karaokeing, and then the switch flips in my brain and I'm like, "Yep, I'm going home. Bye."
And that is all
Like,
for this night. Yes.
yes,
I'm done. I have to
absolutely.
leave. It is funny
Peace.
though, because that switch is like, and cut. I'm out. Like it
Yep,
can be and it sneaks up out of I mean, I feel like you're
it
describing me
does.
right now because as another extroverted introvert, it's like, yes, I can go up and talk in front of 200 people and be like, yeah,
Uh-huh.
this, and this. I'm not shy. It's not shyness. It's not any of that. And then
No.
I'm like, whew, bye.
Yep.
It's that
100%.
fast.
I noticed it in grad school. It's the first time I noticed that that switch would flip in my brain. And I had to explain it to my friends at the time. But now I've gotten to the point where everybody knows this about me. I am outgoing. I love humans, but I'm an introvert. And I get to a point where my social battery is just at zero. And
Yeah.
peace, I'm out for the night. But
Yeah.
I'll be back tomorrow and I'll be ready and raring to go tomorrow. But I need to recharge now. And that's how I do it at these
Mhm.
conferences. I have been invited to get a hotel room with four other people or whatever, and four people share. No, that's not for me. I can't. I love you all, but that's not for me.
I'll see you at
You will
breakfast.
hate me by the end of this trip if I
Mhm.
join with you. So I have to be very, very clear in myself. I honestly feel like, and I've been saying this for the 10 years that I've been coaching now at this point, self awareness is really the first step with a lot of this stuff. If you notice the switch flips in your brain, then you just need to make the space. And this is what a lot of us don't do. We need to make the space to understand, why is the switch flipping in my brain? What does that say about my personality? Like, why do I constantly feel compelled to get my own hotel room? What does that say about my personality? And even with what you said a second ago, where you were like, what happened 2 weeks ago that made such chaos now? Like, if there was, 15 minutes where you could just explore that, what is the thing that happened 2 weeks ago that changed? That self awareness is a superpower. Self
Mhm.
awareness literally will help you with so many things, including and in particular burnout and stress management, and understanding what your needs are and how you need to pour back into yourself.
Yeah, and really that taking that 15 minutes sometimes can be really
Yeah.
hard, where it's like, nope,
Hmm.
something happened 15 minutes ago, but me, I have to go, go, go,
Hmm.
go, go. And that's when you're going to fall into that trap of burnout. But taking that time
Hmm.
to step back. So, how do you help walk people through that?
Oh gosh. Well, I would immediately say, with that example that you just gave, oftentimes we can't take the 15 minutes in real time. But what
Mhm.
we can do is maybe like tuck that away. I'm a big fan of capturing what's happening. So like capturing, when you think of the to-do, when you think of the idea for like a social media post, or like that note that you need to jot down to share with your client or whatever it might be, or to share with your manager, capture those things. But this might also be something that we capture. Like, maybe we have a tendency to journal or something. Maybe we jot down, okay, this happened on Monday and I don't have time to explore it right now, but I'm going to write this down so that I remember to journal on that later in the week.
Mhm.
So it doesn't have to be analyzing those things in real time, because I as well would feel like that's disruptive to the flow of my day for me to be like, I need to analyze this. Like, that's probably not practical for the flow of a lot of our days. But can we capture it somewhere and make the space later in the week to explore that thing? I journal. I'm a big fan of
Mhm.
meditation too, because I don't think meditation is so much about clearing your mind as meditation is about, A, teaching yourself that you don't have to react to every single thought you have, and B, just to see where your mind goes. Like, if my mind keeps going back to this thing that happened 2 weeks ago that I'm still feeling anxious about, that I'm still over analyzing, that's probably a big sign that that's something I need to spend a little bit more time exploring. So, like, meditation, I think, can be really powerful to just see, like, what's your mind stuck on? Where's your mind going? I used
Mhm.
to, probably a couple years ago, when I was really in the thick of doing a lot of this personal growth, I would meditate and then I would journal subsequently after I meditated, because I used like where my brain went during my meditation to inform what I felt like I needed to journal on. So, like, that's something that I use. But honestly, my favorite tool to use, and I talk about this frequently, is what's called a weekly review. And
Mhm.
I literally sit down at the end of each week. It's not always the end. Sometimes it's like Friday night, Saturday, it could be Sunday night over a glass of wine, could be Monday morning, but
Mhm.
sometime in there between Friday and Monday, I sit down and I ask myself, what worked, what didn't work, and what can I improve about my last week?
Yep.
And that's something I have literally been doing for like 7 years at this point. That's the one probably habit that I have consistently maintain because I find so much power in it. And it's the scientist in me. Basically what you're doing is you're gathering data from your life. And I
Mhm.
review myself weekly, monthly, and quarterly. And I gather data over the course of each week. And then on the month, review, I'll look back at like the weekly reviews and I look for patterns. I like look for the things that came up. If something was only an issue on one week, I ignore it. Like that's a fluke, whatever. But if the same thing was coming up in my weekly reviews for 3 of the 4 weeks or 4 of the 4 weeks, red flag. That is something that either need to keep doing because this can
Mhm.
be a continue doing, but it also could be like, this is something that I need to stop doing or something that I need to address in some way. And I find that is such beautiful self-awareness right there. And it literally can boil down to once a week. Like if you have, and we all do, we just need to make room for it, like 20 minutes once a week to ask yourself those 3 questions and reflect back and just do that. Turn it into a ritual. Like I used to light a candle and pour myself a glass of wine on Sunday night and I would sit down and do this.
That's perfect. Yeah. And it's funny. So you said this is fun because I also like I journal and it's funny. Some days where I sit down to journal, I get so mad because I'm like, ugh, I have nothing to journal on today. But I love the idea. I do feel like sometimes like I need to stop right now and figure this out. But
Mhm.
I'm not stopping right now because I have these things that have to get
Yeah.
done. So I need to like this, I'm stealing this idea. This idea of using this later as a journal prompt the next day because
Mhm.
sometimes I just forget. But I do also go back and do a review. Now I do mine every night before bed. I'll go back into my journal and say what worked, what didn't work, what would I do differently, and I'll do it every
Mhm.
day. And I'm on to myself. Like I know every day I'm like, didn't go out and do this, didn't do this. I'm like, why?
Mhm.
Why am I not doing this? And
Mhm.
so that's something that I'm like, yeah, that's something I can journal
Mhm.
on. But I'm just going to say that if you all do not have waterproof paper in your shower, get a waterproof pad of paper and get a little suction cup and hang it
That's
on the wall
smart.
because my best podcast ideas, my best like, oh my God, this was this thing I needed to think about. I am like jotting stuff down in the shower every day. It is
That's
like the
so
water
funny.
comes on and my brain comes on with it. But I do, like I have a waterproof notebook. I am that girl. It is hanging in my shower. And I'm like, this is really important. Like when this runs out, I will always have waterproof paper in my shower.
That is so
I mean, my
funny. I've
husband has
never
to think I'm nuts. Like, why would we do this? I'm like, shh, shh, shh,
I'll
I need
like
this.
have conversations in my shower, which, the next time I live with somebody, they're gonna be like, she is crazy.
the,
Um,
the
but
crazy lady.
I actually don't feel like it happens on occasion for me that I get shower thoughts. What happens a lot for me is when I go on walks.
Oh,
When I
yes.
go on walks, all the ideas come up to the
Yeah.
point, and this is actually very common for a lot of the clients I work with too. So like one thing that I use Notion is like my capture system, but honestly, if you were
Uh-huh.
a paper person, just use the notes app on your phone.
Yeah.
But like I literally have a page in my Notion that is it is I have a quick link on my phone home screen and it's all called my quick capture page, and it has a place to jot down tasks, a place to jot down notes, and then what usually happens for me is I think of content ideas when I'm out on walks. I should post this on Instagram. I should share this on LinkedIn. I should do a podcast about this. And I have a content part of it too. So I have like these 3 sections of my quick capture
Hmm.
page, which is tasks, notes, and content ideas.
Yeah.
And I'll be out walking, I just dump it and then I go back to my walk.
It's so good. I use the notes app on my phone too. And I think that like in terms of stress or in terms of burnout, being able to it can be really stressful when I had this idea, I can't remember what it is and I lost it, but to be able to just keep track of those, I'm a huge list maker. And I
Mhm.
think and not I mean, to help really prevent burnout, to say, this is what's on my list. And I always have said, like, you need to put like the big rocks first, right? These are the things that have to be done. And then you can add the other things in if you want to, but being able to cross things off and say, oh, look, I did enough. Like I did
Yeah.
my list today. I'm allowed to stop if I want to. I don't have to, but I have permission. I give myself permission to stop because my list is done. And that means I can go
Permission's a
do
big
something
part of
fun.
it.
It is.
Yeah,
It's really
permission is a big
permission.
part of it. Well, and I
Yeah.
think too, like what you touched on about like overwhelm, and it can be stressful to try to like, oh, what was that idea that I had? That is
Mhm.
like I personally feel like I talk about a lot in my work sustainable success and how do we create sustainable success for ourselves? Because I work with a lot of like Enneagram 3, very type A, like very high achieving people who like success is a motivation for them. Like
Mhm.
that is the core of fulfillment for them is being seen as and feeling
Yeah.
successful. Um, and so I found that there's like three core parts of that. To create
Mhm.
sustainable success, you need sustainable systems, you need sustainable self care, and you need a sustainable mindset. And I think what we're just touching on right now
Mhm.
is the sustainable systems part. I feel like one of the biggest things a lot of people do wrong, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of facets to sustainable systems, but I feel like the initial thing that a lot of people do wrong is they try to remember way too much crap, which is
Yes.
overwhelming as all hell if you are trying to remember everything. Remember that idea you came up with, remember that thing that so and so told you to do, remember that idea that you thought of while you were having a conversation with that person. We try to remember way too much stuff. So that's one of the things is don't try to remember it, write it down in whatever
Mhm.
place you write it down. And then the second piece is we store information in way too many different places. Like,
Yeah.
think of all of the different like, if you were to just think right now of all of the different places where you have information coming into your
Like
world,
my
just, like,
paper
start
calendar and my
listing them
digital
off.
calendar.
Well, it's not probably doesn't even start at that because like, we're talking about
Yeah.
information coming into your world. Those are the places you
Yeah.
store information.
Right.
Where is information coming from? Like, new
Okay.
tasks, new notes, new ideas, like, new inputs. Where all are you receiving that information from over the course of your day?
Yeah. I mean, this is where we go, right? We go to social media, we go to podcasts, we go to
Yep,
LinkedIn, we go to the news, we go
yep,
to whatever else is on the radio or your kids
yep.
or the people you talk to. It's just like information
Exactly.
overloaded all the time. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If we were all to just start listing that off, there's dozens of places
Oh,
that
for
we receive
sure.
information from, like emails, text messages,
Oh,
like conversations,
yes.
like social media. Like all of these places are places that we're receiving information from. But I think where overwhelm starts to happen and where we start to not have sustainable systems and we waste time is we store that information. Oh, we got it via email. Okay, I'm just going to mark that email as unread, or I'm just going to keep it in my inbox and then I'll go back to it later. Or I'll just keep that text message. And I'm still guilty of this. I'm imperfect
Mhm.
with this. But like the best thing we can do is when that information comes in, put it in the same location, consolidate it all into one spot. And that's why I'm such a big
Mhm.
fan of digital systems is they're unlimited. Like paper systems,
Yeah.
I'm a reformed paperaholic, I feel like, because my parents used to literally make fun of me and how many like journals and
Yeah.
notebooks I had and
Yeah.
that I would like carry with me on trips. I would have like a backpack just of my like journals when we would go on vacation. Like I used to be that kid and now I'm like basically fully digital
Mm.
because I've learned how much of a weight is lifted off of my brain when I don't have to think about, okay, was this an email? Was this a text? Did somebody say it? Where did this
Yeah.
information come from? It's just all in one place. So like there's the sustainable systems part of it that I feel like a lot of us need, but there's also like the sustainable self-care part of it. Like we talked before about like you've got to pour into yourself. But this is where a lot of us go wrong is our version of self-care is literally this laundry list of
Mhm.
things that we feel like we have to do every
Yeah.
day to be taking care of ourselves. That's not sustainable. I love I think it was James Clear who said this. He's one of those like I think he wrote Atomic
Mhm.
Habits.
Yes.
And I think what he said, I'm paraphrasing here, was something along the lines of we create our routines for our best day. But what we should do is we should create our routines for our worst day. Because if you think about your routines on your best day, yeah, if you have an abundance of time to stretch for 15 minutes and then go on a 45-minute walk and then spend an hour into the gym and then take a nice leisurely morning to prepare your breakfast. If that's your best day where you have an abundance of time, cool, it's going to work on that day. But what about the day where you woke up late or your kid got sick in the morning?
Right.
Or like, what do we do on those days? If our routines are built around the ideal day, we're going to feel like shit on the days where we're too busy to do the ideal routine.
Right. And our routines are powerful. They really, I mean,
Absolutely.
they help us obviously on our best days, but the days that we need the most are our worst days because it gives us something to hang on to that's stable. And we know the brains love stability, right? Like that's going to keep us from
Exactly.
feeling more anxious and more stressed out and
Mhm.
more overwhelmed. But that is such a mind. I mean, that is such like you're right. There's so much truth to that, right? We do our oh my gosh, this is the best day. I get up, I do this, I do
Mhm.
this, I do this, but then, somebody throws up. And what are you supposed to do about that? Or, you have to go take you have a flat tire, whatever it is that happens that day,
Yeah. And
that
if
can
your routines
really
aren't
mess things up.
adaptable,
Yeah,
absolutely, that can throw
for
you off
sure.
tremendously if your routines aren't adaptable. I've really had to like my impulse when I'm like trying to think of what do I need in a routine. And I literally ran into this earlier this year. We were talking about routines in my membership. And
Mhm.
I asked myself, what do I want to do in my morning routine? And that is a dangerous question to ask a lot of people because if you ask, what do you want to do? You're going to list like a dozen things that you want to do.
Right.
So I said, okay, scratch that because that is not a routine that I can maintain day to day. I instead asked myself, how do I want to feel? And I thought of the things that are going to make me feel that way. And that was a much more productive conversation
Yeah.
around routines, was to just focus on how do I want to feel? I want to feel rejuvenated and energized in my morning routine, and I want to feel calm and relaxed in my evening routine. So then it's about like what things give me that, and not having like a routine where it's like, okay, I'm going to spend 15 minutes doing this and 15 minutes doing this. Just give yourself a list, like a array of activities you can choose from,
Mhm.
and anything you have time for on that day, that's what you do. That is sustainable self-care. I think obviously self-care
Mhm.
has to sustain us and our lifestyles, but it also in and of itself has to be sustainable. And I think
Mhm.
that is the
Mhm.
part that a lot of us miss out on when it comes to self-care. If your self-care is the very thing that is stressing you out and burning you out, that's not self-care. We've got
No.
to flip that around in our brain.
Yeah, and if it is at that point where it's stressing you out and burning you out, it's because you're not doing it, and there's a reason you're not doing it, right?
Mhm.
Like, I'm not if you're I mean, if your self-care is stressful, it's not self-care at
No.
all, just like what you just said, it's
Yeah.
not, and if that's not working for you, what made you think it was that? I think there's always this misconception of what self-care is. It means I have to have
100%.
yeah, I have to have nap time, and I have to go
Mhm.
to get a massage, or I have to do whatever, like the like fluffy self-care, but I'm like, "No, that doesn't have to be it." I mean, it might be like cooking a really great dinner for you. It might
Yeah.
be like, "No, I have to chop vegetables." I mean, honest to God, chopping vegetables is major self-care for me. It's meditative. It
Yeah, I
is
hate chopping. I
amazing.
hate
See,
chopping
and I'm like, "You
vegetables.
know what? I'm stressed out. You just get me like some veggies. I'm gonna chop those up. I'm gonna feel
Cooking is
good."
self-care for me.
For
I do
sure.
feel like cooking is self-care. I hate chopping vegetables, and I do feel like that is the type A achiever in me. It feels like a waste of time, so I always get
Yeah.
vegetables, like, pre-chopped, but
Yeah.
I like cooking because the
Uh-huh.
act of I feel like I'm so much slower when I cook a meal and then I eat the meal. The thing I find a lot of people that I work with in particular struggle with is how they define movement. So, like,
Ooh, okay.
they think of self-care in terms of like exercise, and
Mhm.
exercise only counts in their brain if it's like going to the gym and literally sweating their asses off for like an
Right.
hour or 90 minutes. And if it's not that, it doesn't count. But what I've learned recently, I've been pouring a lot of energy and effort and intention into my health the last several
Mhm.
months. Perhaps it's because I just turned 35. I really wanted to go into 35 just like thriving and firing on
Mhm.
all cylinders. And one of the things that I learned in this health program that I was enrolled in was how, and this is like literally science backed, people, like the what contributes to your metabolism and how efficiently your metabolism operates. The It's called NEAT. I don't remember what the acronym stands for, but it's basically it's the non-exercise movement that we do actually contributes to our metabolic activity way more
Mhm.
than
Yeah.
exercise in and of itself does. So we're like
Yeah.
literally talking about like steps, like, how
Yeah.
much are you moving over the course of the day? And actually, the ideal amount of steps is not 10,000 steps. It's more like
No.
8,000.
Yes. 10,000 is like, did you go on a 5-mile walk today? Every
Yeah.
day without fail?
Yeah.
I did not.
Which honestly, even like what I've started to realize for myself is, and this has been an amazing thing for like my hormones and like just all sorts of like those kind of sides of stress. This has been amazing for me. I really haven't been hitting the gym a lot the last
Mhm.
several months. I have been focusing on walking and hitting a step goal every single
Yeah.
day. And I go on a walk damn near every morning
It's
now.
so
Um,
good.
and it's so good. And I think
Yeah.
that has been and it's literally been
Mm.
the last 3 months of me reprogramming that. When I started this health program that I did, it was okay, I'm going to follow her exercise program. I'm going to
Yeah.
follow it to a T. And then as soon as we had this conversation about non exercise movement, it was again, it was like that switch flipped in my brain. I was just like, wait, you mean I can be gentle with my body and it's going to give me more health advantages?
Mhm.
It blew my mind. But, like,
Yeah.
that's what I needed. I needed the I'm a scientist. I needed the data to tell me it is okay to do this, and as soon as I did, movement has been completely redefined in my brain. Like, the exercise now and hitting the gym now is like a cherry on top of a good day in terms of movement, and I feel like
Mhm.
that's what a lot of us need when we think about movement. We need to redefine what counts as movement, because, again, if your movement is the thing that is creating stress because you didn't go to the gym and you weren't in the gym long enough and you didn't push yourself hard enough, that is literally negating what we are trying to create when it comes to
Absolutely.
stress and anxiety and burnout. Like, we movement should feel good first and foremost. And if
Yeah.
it doesn't, if it's creating anxiety, that's not what we want. We've got to axe that and we've got to get back to building the good foundations, which is what I've been focusing on a lot personally recently.
That's so good. And that's what I mean, a lot of times when we talk about movement, like and relieving anxiety and things like that, and people will say, I don't like to exercise, it makes me feel more anxious, or I don't like to exercise, I don't like to be sweaty and all this. I'm like, well, what did you
Mhm.
like to do when you were a kid? Like,
Play
when did you get
soccer.
to go outside and play? Yeah. I like to play soccer. I like to go on bike rides. I like to go out and
Rollerblade.
skiing. I like to rollerblade. I like to play tag. I like to play kickball.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, there's so many good ideas out there of people. I'm like, okay, well, what if you just did that?
I need to find my rollerblades. I'm pretty sure
And
I
like,
have them.
yeah.
Like,
And I'm like, I mean, if you need permission, I'm right here. Like, go. I want your job tonight is to go outside and roll down a hill. Like, whatever it
love
is,
that.
go lay at the top and roll down the hill, walk back up, do it again. You've exercised.
You know
Good
what? I
job.
actually like I actually liked this. I'm a soccer player. I can't play soccer anymore. My knees are too bad. I wish I
Mhm.
could. I've literally looked into joining adult leagues, and every time I'm about to join one, I'm just like, I can't do this. I'm going to end up in an urgent care
No, no.
before, like, sooner rather than later. I know. That's the sad part about getting older is my favorite things from when I was younger. My literally my body can't take anymore.
Yeah,
But I loved doing hill sprints. Am I a weirdo? Like because I
maybe.
played soccer, I don't like distance running. Like, I've done a half marathon, but every time I think about doing a half marathon again, I'm just like, "Uh, I don't like it." But I
Yeah,
love the sprint, stop, sprint, stop, sprint, stop. That's it feels like I'm playing soccer again. Like, that's I
yeah, it
feel like
does.
how I was always enjoyed energy and like running around. I actually dated a guy. I haven't said this on a podcast ever, but I've said it to my friends. I dated a guy who said it sounds so mean, but it made me absolutely cackle when he said it. He's like, Ellen, you're like a dog. The only time you like to run is when you have a ball to chase. And it's so accurate because I loved sports. I loved being able to exert myself while I was almost like distracted by something else, like chasing a ball or
Yeah.
like, yeah, I was that person, and it absolutely makes me cackle because it sounds so mean, but it was so accurate.
Well, but it's true, and it's what you liked when you were little, so it
I
makes
did,
sense
I
that you
loved
get
it.
excited about it now. I mean, it does we go back to those things so often.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I liked when I was little. If we would have trusted our little selves a little bit more,
Oh my god.
would it not have made all the difference in the world? I mean, not that we I I think we're few and far between on the people who were really, really. Yes, it happens, right? That we do have people who have horrible, horrible home lives and situations. But for the most part, the crap that we picked up, we're just things that we misinterpreted. But if we would have learned that,
Hmm.
it was okay to do these things that maybe weren't socially accepted or culturally accepted or whatever at that point,
Yeah.
and we could have learned to trust ourselves, man, it would have been so much easier. I just
Yeah.
wonder what it would have been like. Like, where did I pick something up? How did I interpret that? Not that it matters,
Oh,
I don't think
and
so much learning that, but it's so
I can
interesting.
pinpoint a lot of that for myself, but I know what you mean, and I don't feel like when anybody ever says that, they're not talking about, like, the rough parts of our
Right.
childhood, I don't think. I feel like when we say that, we're literally saying, like, follow the joy, follow the things that, like,
Yes.
I feel like when we're children, even though we would never articulate it this way when we're children, we're so clear on what our values are when
Yeah.
we're children, and we just follow that. But, like,
Mhm.
as we get older, we start to get so caught up in the shoulds, and frankly, this is, like, veering into the 3rd part of the pillars, which is the sustainable mindset part.
Mhm.
Like, but when as we start growing up, get so caught up in the shoulds. I vividly remember conversations, and it wasn't even conversations, it was just remarks that I heard from my family growing up about weight, some of which were directed at me. I literally just posted something on Instagram about haters and somebody who made a shitty comment on one of my Instagram reels related to this. I know, unrelated, but like I remember hearing comments about weight and what was perceived as attractive, but vividly when it came to career and the careers we pursue, I
Mhm.
vividly remember my dad saying something about, "Oh, so and so's kid majored in X." I think it was like women's history or something like that.
Right.
So and so's kid majored in X. What are you going to do with that career? I
Yeah. I can remember things like
vividly,
that too, which is
yeah,
yeah.
which like no freaking wonder I went
Right.
into science. Like
Right.
literally, I got a sick, twisted satisfaction out of when people would like I would tell them, "Oh, I'm a microbiology and genetics major." Those were my majors when I was in college.
Yeah,
Which
you
don't get
got
me wrong,
probably like, "Ooh."
I'm a science nerd and I loved it, but I think the
Uh-huh.
thing I loved the most was I loved how people responded.
Yeah.
Oh, I literally got told by a
You're a
random Home Depot
genius.
employee when I was in graduate school, "Oh, you must be a glutton for punishment." That's what this random Home Depot employee said to me when
Thanks.
he's like, "Well, you're from Seattle. Why are you out here?" I was like, "Oh, I'm in graduate school." He's like, "Oh, what's your degree?" I was like, "I'm getting a PhD in microbiology and immunology." And he literally goes, "You're a glutton for punishment." And there was a part of me that got a sick, twisted satisfaction out of people responding to my major
Yeah,
that
it's
way.
hard, man. It is really hard. And I'm
It's
smart.
really hard. I'm so
You
smart.
couldn't
Like,
do it, Home
yeah,
Depot
tell
man.
tell me I'm doing a good job. Like again, it's like full circle moment. But like that was not like when it really came down to it, and I really dug deep, and this is one of my favorite things to do with people. I really dug deep into my values.
Mhm, mhm.
I realized that fulfillment for me, like the false sense of fulfillment came from Dr. Ellen and came from the sick twisted satisfaction that I got from people. But what true fulfillment felt like for me was feeling like I was growing and feeling like I was doing better.
Yeah.
And that's why graduate school started driving me crazy because I felt like I was on a hamster wheel. I was doing the same thing over and over again. It wasn't working, which was a whole other issue. But
Mhm.
like what am I'm not learning. I'm not growing. I remember meetings that I would go into, like meetings with people who were supposed to be my mentors. And this is not directed at my two main PhD mentors. This was another lady. I remember one lady in particular who I had to present my research and she just tore it apart. Just wouldn't even let me like explain it before she just ripped into it. And I remember going back to the back of the room after that and being like, what? Like, why am I here? I am in school to learn, and I don't feel like I'm learning anything.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm growing at all. And as soon as I started to get very, very clear on fundamentally what true fulfillment was for me, I think that's when I realized I can't pursue this anymore. Like I know my values to a T. And I know I check in with my values on a month to month to month basis. And I literally give myself like 5 stars to like 1 star to 5 star of like, how well do I feel like I'm embodying this value right now? And I feel like that is why a lot of us in our work, in our lives, don't feel good about the way that we're showing up. And that
Mhm.
creates burnout emotionally, which I personally feel like is one of the most like pervasive forms of burnout is emotional burnout. It's like my favorite form of burnout because I feel like it's the one that's so enlightening for so many
Yeah.
people to learn about. But like as soon as I knew my core values and I could check into them, emotional burnout has not been an issue for me since graduate school because I have such crystal clear picture of what my values are, how I embody those values. I make space for emotional processing, which that's again where that journaling comes in because when we
Yeah.
don't deal with things and we just continue to shove them down, like that's going to explode at some point in time. That is when we snap at people. That is when we start crying uncontrollably for reasons we don't understand. Like that is that side of things. And I feel like if people just stopped shoulding themselves with their values, which frankly,
Mhm.
I think family is often a should value. Well, family is
Mhm.
not one of my values. That might be a controversial thing to say, but I think a lot of people say their values family. I don't think your value is family. I think your value is what you get out of your relationships with your family. And for me,
Mhm.
I get belonging out of my relationship with my family and my friends. That's my value. It's not family.
Mhm.
I could care less whether or not you are my family or not. If you give me a sense of belonging, then you are important in my
Mhm.
world.
Mhm.
And I feel like that is the stuff that we really need to break down and really, really get very clear on is what are the shoulds? What are the should values we are imposing upon ourselves? Because
Yeah.
if we can identify those and ditch them and really figure out what our true core values are, you will have a sustainable mindset that is going to help stave off, that is going to, I always say, become burnout proof. That's going to help you become burnout proof for the rest of your life if you get clear on your values. If anybody does anything from this, that is what I would recommend
Like one giant mic drop. Like, I'm
doing.
like, how many quotes can I pull from one episode?
I mean, I can just be your
No,
social
but
media content for
seriously,
a
I'm like,
while.
okay, there's so much in here,
Tag
so
me.
much in this episode that, yeah, like a million things that I could say right now. But really, when someone wants to connect with you, where do they find you? Because you are golden, my friend. Like,
Thank you.
where do people find you?
Well, I am Coach Ellen everywhere. I have a very German last name that I do not use. It rhymes with stinky, fun fact. But I'm Coach Ellen everywhere. And my first name is spelled Ellyn. So Coach Ellyn. I'm on Instagram. I'm really starting to get more and more into LinkedIn So if you like, what I like about LinkedIn is like, what's the one website you could pull up at work and like your boss could come up to you and like not be mad about you having pulled up in the background? LinkedIn. So I'm starting to be on
It's true.
LinkedIn
It's
more.
true.
Like Instagram, they might get a little mad. Facebook, they might get a little mad, but LinkedIn, that
She's
is a
being
productive
professional
social media.
today.
Yes, yes. So I'm getting more and more into LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. And then coachellen.com is my website. I have a free subscriber hub on my website for anybody who opts into anything. And I have like 80 bajillion opt-ins. So yeah, Coach Ellen everywhere. Again, ELLYN.
And I will add all of those links to the end of the show notes and on YouTube and all the places. But oh my gosh, thank you for
Thank
spending
you.
time with me today. I appreciate it so much and so much great information. Wow. Like, I'm going to go back and take notes.
Thank you so much for having me. This was
Yeah,
a
thank
blast. Great
you.
way to start off my day
Thank you.
today.